Hi Year 11, welcome to your second video. This one's going to talk you through your second assessment task specifically for Standard English. So if you look at your gold sheet, you'll see some preliminary information on the front page. So you'll know obviously this is your second task. We are assessing contemporary possibilities and it is the multimodal assessment. So it has a digital technological sort of approach to it. It's weighted at 40%. And it is due on the 15th of June, Thursday. And like your first one, it's due by 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The outcomes are there and you'll see that we're giving it out with a lot of notice, so you've got plenty of time to prepare. Okay, so the task itself. Module A, Contemporary Possibilities. We are asking you to write and record a podcast. The podcast should reveal your personal understanding of the module and your prescribed text. So the first thing I'll highlight is the module. Now, I think the second page of your booklets for Into the Wild has the module description written by Nessa. I'd urge you to go back and look at that. It asks you to consider, what's this unit all about? What do we mean by contemporary possibilities? The second thing I'll remind you about is the prescribed text. So to do well in this assignment, you need to be pretty confident with Sean Penn's Into the Wild. The way it's composed, how meaning is communicated. Now, with those in mind, so the module and the prescribed text, we tie them together by answering this question. So the question is, stories, like people, are never simple. It is the complexity of narratives that make them engaging and meaningful. How true is this when looking at Sean Penn's Into the Wild? Now, when we think about complexity, you might want to Google or look that word up in synonyms. If something's complex, it's varied, it's rich, it's challenging, it's complicated. Now, narratives tend to be that. And especially when you think about Sean Penn, the way he's told the story is quite rich and complicated in a lot of ways. But this is suggesting that that's what makes the story engaging and what makes the story meaningful. And the story, like Chris, is not a simple one. So you need to have your own personal idea. And that's why we think it's really important that the question lends itself to that, because a podcast should be about ownership of ideas and really fostering your personal voice. Now, if you haven't listened to podcasts, I urge you to do that because we want you to be engaging. Now, some of the feedback that you might have got for your first assessment task is about awareness of audience. Are you engaging your listeners? Have you got them interested? Now, you can be really creative with this if you like. So you can pretend to be, a particular professor of literature at whatever university and interviewing some other expert and take a really academic approach. You might want to interview Sean Penn or some sort of quirky surrealist interview of Chris. As long as you're coming back to analysing the film, how it was composed to communicate meaning and be engaging. Now, regardless of what approach you take, you as the author, you as the composer of this podcast, you the student must have an active speaking role. So you can get mum and dad to be part of it, but you must be involved and have an active speaking role. Now, it's not going to be published for everyone in the grade to hear, but you must be involved in that. Now, the timing's quite tight. 3.5 to 4 minutes is the range. Now, we will stop the podcast at 4 minutes. So if you go beyond 4 minutes, we won't listen to anything other than that, and it won't get marked. So manage your time really carefully. There are 2 things you need to submit. The typed up transcript of who's saying what is going to go to Turnitin, so we can check plagiarism. The actual audio, though, of what we press play to and listen to is going to a discrete special Google Classroom, and the code is there. So it is not the same code as your normal Google Classroom. It's one that all of Standard will become a member of, and everyone will upload their assignment. Now, you will have an opportunity to get some feedback. Your teachers will accept a written transcript of who's going to say what. Now, we will take that, look at it, make some notes, and give you some suggestions so you can make change before you get to the audio section. That will be due the 1st of June. Your teachers will negotiate how that comes in. Okay, so the marking criteria. Let's pay particular attention to the first band, which is our A range. So what do we need to do to get an A range? We need to demonstrate informed understanding. So you've got to show the marker that you really understand how complexities of narratives engage and make meaning. So I want you to be brave. For that first outcome, be brave. Build a thesis. Have something to say. Be confident with an argument. The second outcome asks you to present an insightful response. Insight. So not just stuff you know, but are you giving us insight into what you think the real meaning of this text is? And you support that with well-detailed evidence. So evidence, we're meaning quotes, reference to how things are actually composed, real details from the film. Show us that you know the film well and how it's being composed. And the other thing is you select the evidence that proves the point you're trying to make. So it all ties together. And as always in English, we're assessing how well you can compose your response to that form. So for your first assessment, it was how well you could compose for the persuasive form or the discursive. We want you to think about the fluidity of your language, your vocabulary, your expression, but specific to the podcast form. So be comfortable with those podcast conventions. So a few tips to get you started. You really need to know the text. Engage with the film meaningfully. Watch it again if you need to. Research. Read about the film. You'll listen to interviews with Sean Penn about it. Go back and actually look at the book that it was based off, Into the Wild. Learn about Chris's life as well if that's going to help. Engage with the text. Now, because it's a podcast, you should learn and be comfortable with the podcast form, the style, the voice, the format, all of those sort of things. So listen widely and be mindful of time. So we're giving you this out with a lot of notice. So we want you to plan. Now, how I would do it is I get a nice white piece of paper, write the question in the middle and annotate it as much as I can. Everything that I know already that could answer this question, I'd get it on the page. And as I research and as I read and as I watch the film again, keep adding things to that document until you can take a step back and say, what do I want to say? What is my thesis? What is my line of argument? And really go narrow and think, how am I going to prove that now? So plan out, what scenes am I going to address? What cinematic features will be the best to prove the point I'm trying to make? Draft it carefully. Get other people to read it before you give it to your English teacher. Check it out on an audience. A lot of you would have noticed that when you got your feedback from task 1, we're asking you to polish your language more. So read the work out loud. Check fluidity. Check the clarity. Ask yourself, could I improve my vocabulary to express this in a more engaging or academic way? And read it out loud to listen to that and practice the recording before. Don't leave it to the last minute. Now, if you have any other questions, please, of course, talk to your English teachers. Otherwise, I'm available if there's questions about misadventure or, any of those sort of issues. Remember that 4 o'clock is the cutoff. Even 1 minute after that, it is late. Now, there is no more flexibility about those sort of things. If it is late, it is a 0 unless you have a legitimate misadventure and can validate that. All right, good luck, Year 11. Work hard, and I look forward to listening to the podcasts.